ESTJ.
My ENFP view on things.
We met on Instagram.
Ilyssa and I met a little over 3 years ago through Instagram. I had stumbled across her account when I was looking through hashtags for the San Jose Fitness Expo.
I posted a photo of some progress photos when I was prepping for a show, and Kyle decided that he was gonna comment on it and just say something like, hey, you look great. If I see you at the Fit Expo, I'll come say hi.
She looked like a tan goddess. She was in phenomenal shape. You can tell she worked out. And so I had commented at the time, you know, saying hopefully good luck, hopefully I'll see you, I'll be at the expo.
And I kind of out of character responded and said, oh, please do. And that's how our relationship began on Instagram. My first impression of Kyle is, well, he looked a lot like bigger on Instagram. I guess people take like photos of the angles, you know, so he looked like huge, and he's very muscular, but in person he was a lot like leaner muscle than like big bulky muscle. You know, it's like the swole muscle when you're at the gym. So that was my first impression, that, oh, he's not quite as monstrous as I thought that he was.
First perception of her was nothing but positive. At the time, I didn't really have any idea about bodybuilding or the bikini physique, figure, anything like that.
But then after that, my impression was that he was really goofy and funny, and I loved that. He made me laugh the minute that we met. I knew I was in love with Kyle probably 2 months into our relationship.
I would say, so we met in June, started dating July. I told her I loved her October 5th, 2013 at my best friend's wedding. And I would say I knew I was in love with her about a month before. I want to say 3 weeks, 4 weeks before that.
He made me feel amazing about myself. I had just competed in a bikini competition, and I was struggling pretty severely afterwards with wanting to eat more food but not wanting to overindulge, and he just really was a safe place for me.
And I knew it because she made me feel wanted and important all of the time. So she was constantly, we were together from the day we started dating. We were together every day for at least the first year, at least 365 days straight. And for me to be able to spend that much time with someone, especially that early on, a couple months into the relationship, I knew I loved her. I knew I wanted to have her around all the time. I pretty much knew a couple months into it that I want to be with this person for the rest of my life.
I think my former relationships really influenced how I behave in my relationship with Kyle, because I knew coming into my relationship with Kyle what I did not want.
I would say it's more so what I had seen of myself during those relationships that have helped. I wouldn't say the other person had a lot to do with building me to be better in a relationship. It was more so the flaws that I grew out of.
It's in my nature to have a sense of duty and to want to do things for my partner. But in my previous relationships, I think I really took on the role of the controller or the dominator or the mom almost. And I wanted a man who was sure of himself and was confident in who he was and what he wanted in his life. And though some of those things over the course of our relationship have shifted, I knew very early on that Kyle was who he was, and he was confident in who he was, and that confidence exuded from him, and I really liked that about him.
My first relationship, I had a really bad issue with self-confidence, with believing in myself, with believing in the person I could be to someone. So I constantly was second guessing whether or not this person cared about me and whether or not, you know, they were doing shady things. I constantly just felt jealous. So I think realizing the small flaws, or in this case, that was a big flaw, and that's a huge flaw in many relationships, realizing that jealousy and certain old behaviors I had cannot be a part of this relationship.
I think my previous relationships have also sometimes negatively affected my relationship with Kyle. I had issues in the past with opening up to my partner in a variety of ways, and that probably kept me back sometimes from showing, you know, the innermost parts of myself to Kyle and to want to feel vulnerable with him early on. But eventually, you know, once I trusted him and once I was able to form that, you know, bond and that companionship with him, I was able to really open up to him. I think my previous relationships have also maybe impacted Kyle and I's relationship now because they've shown us what good partnership actually looks like.
Ilyssa and I have both done a great job of being confident in ourselves in this relationship.
Say, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I settled for something like that in the past. Whereas now, you know, our relationship is so much fuller and just a deeper and richer love. And I love that I can, you know, look at the course of my relationships and see that everything was leading up to me being with this man who is in every way right for me. Feminism to me is equality for women and men. It is men are here, women are trying to become as equal to men. Not above men, that's misandry. Feminism is equality between men and women.
Feminism is simple. Feminism is women and men being equal. Ilyssa's here and I'm here. We are the same. I'm here, every other woman is on the same level as me, and every other man is on the same level as me, and we're all on the same level, getting the same respect, the same treatment, the same pay, the same everything you could imagine.
Egalitarianism then, especially in a relationship for me, would be equal partnership.
And in our household, we follow that we are just two individuals on the same playing field, in the same relationship, and we deserve to be treated with the same amount of respect towards one another as we would expect from the other person.
It's beyond just a relationship. You are actually in companionship and in compromise all the time with your partner, and that you are striving to make things as equal as possible in the home, in your mentalities towards one another, in your expectations, in your roles in your partnership. So egalitarianism takes into context your needs and your partner's needs, or your wants and your partner's wants, and makes sure that those things are equal. I think that we implement these ideas in our relationship through our open conversations about feminism and about egalitarianism and about perceptions of those things in society.
I don't think we at all have any gender roles play into our relationship. I think we've broken down anything we do. There is a subconscious thought as to why am I doing this versus why would she be doing this.
We refuse to align with particular gender roles just because we are told that's how they're supposed to be. We refuse to accept the pseudoscience that women and men are biologically different on certain, you know, aspects like sensitivity or logic or something like that. None of those things are scientifically proven. I mean, none of that is science, and so we reject those things. And instead, we accept the idea that most of the roles that we have inside of us, or the things that we think men are supposed to do or that women are supposed to do, have been socialized for us.
We determine whether or not it's something we want to do because we want to do it, or it's something that society deems we should be doing based on me being a male and she being a female. And we get rid of those roles. So I think that's where we differ a lot, is we don't have gender roles in our relationship.
We have grown into our roles as men and women oftentimes because society has influenced us to do so. And so Kyle and I accept those things, we recognize those things, we contextualize those things, and we say, how can we make those things more equal for us? How can we break those things apart? Kyle and I live very, very independent lives. We've always said that this is his life, this is my life, this is our life together. And notice that they are on completely opposite hands.
My uncle's always said, he's always taught me to have my life, my partner has their life, and then we have a life together.
Our relationship is like a semicolon. A comma, right, holds together an incomplete thought and a complete thought, or two incomplete thoughts. A comma is required to hold together those two phrases. A semicolon, though, It connects two complete thoughts. A thought that could stand on its own, another thought that could stand on its own, but those thoughts work well together and function better together and prefer to be together. So we see our relationship as a semicolon.
We are not in school. We are not children. We're not, still barely figuring out what we're doing in life. We're on paths now that are leading us to our, we are in our careers. Ilyssa's teaching, I'm doing personal training. So we have paths that are completely separate from one another.
Really shows in our desires to seek out things that are entirely different from what our partner wants to do. With critical theory and the things that I read and the things that I'm interested in. And Kyle just isn't interested in those things nearly as much. He will entertain conversations with me, which I really appreciate. But my life at work and my life in my, academic career, those things are very, very separate from him. With Kyle, he really loves being outside and hiking.
I like to go on hikes a lot.
Doing all kinds of calisthenic work, and that's just not me. I like nature, but through a window. I'll entertain him and I'll go with him, that's how we got engaged, me going on a hike with him. We just live very separate lives based upon our interests. And then we have shared interests together.
And sometimes they branch into one another's things where we're interested in what the other person is doing with their clients, what they're doing with their students. But other than that, we are involved in our home life and what we're doing together, but we stay out of each other's own career.
We both play Dungeons and Dragons together. We love good television. We love the gym, but we oftentimes don't even go together. It's very rare that we'll actually train together. Or if we're in the gym at the same time, we don't talk.
I don't need her checking in with me and she doesn't need me checking in with her. That's never been something within our relationship. If I travel to Southern California or vice versa, we'll talk once or twice a day. We do our own things. We have our own separate lives outside of what we have here at home. So if she's not home and I am, I'm not worrying about what she's out doing. And if I'm not home and she is, it goes the same way.
There have definitely been times where I want Kyle to come with me, or I want him to, want to come to a bookstore with me and check out some books, and that's just not him. And I think there doesn't exist a separation anxiety between us. I can't do something if my partner doesn't do it. But I do think that there are times where I'm a little irked, and it's because I want him to come with me or enjoy those things. But that's part of my personality, that I think these things are great, and so I want him to think that these things are great, and he's just gonna be like, it's not for me. I don't really want to do that. He doesn't see value in certain things the same way that I do, and I need to recognize that I can't impose my preferences on Kyle. And what's nice is that he's really, really vocal about when I am imposing my preferences on him. He'll be like, okay, stop trying to control my life, stop trying to control my preferences, let me be me. From the beginning of our relationship, Kyle and I were eating entirely different ways. We met when I was in prep for a bikini show, and he wasn't even aware of what macros were. So we've never had a problem eating different diets.
She's been macro tracking, meal prepping, or doing intuitive eating the entire 3 years that she and I have been together, and I have had pretty much a very free-for-all, freestyle kind of diet mentality the entire time we've been together.
There are times for sure where Kyle eats stuff that I could never even dream of eating, because he'll sit and eat something that's 2,000 calories just on its own and then not eat for the rest of the day. And I just don't function that way.
I have experienced what she does. I have done the prep for a show. I understand and have no problems with her food prepping and watching what she eats for the rest of our lives. I'm completely cool with that, because what she eats does not affect me, and I make it work. I have whatever I want. She has select items she's going to eat because she doesn't consume meat.
We rarely go out to eat because we just don't spend a lot of money on food. We'd rather buy groceries and cook food at home. It's really not a problem between us, I think, because the very beginning of our relationship, we were already eating so differently anyway.
Able to manage our food without that being an issue. We still eat dinners together, we just eat separate foods.
When it comes to housework, I think that because of my ESTJ personality, and my sense of duty, I see housework as following through on an entire job. So if you're going to clean dishes, then you should make sure that you clean them, you put them in the dishwasher, or you clean them and then you put them in the strainer, and then you wait for them to dry, and then it's your responsibility to put them away. Kyle doesn't see the same. He will say, oh, well, I put it in the sink. And I'm like, that's not finishing the job. Not quite. You don't just sweep, you pick it up, you mop it, and then you dump out the water that the mop was in. And Kyle's like, oh, I'll just like sweep. When it comes to the politics of housework or who does what, we have a pretty good dynamic. Kyle is actually excellent at vacuuming. He loves vacuuming and he loves tidying up. He loves dusting. I hate dusting. I'm not gonna go near it. I love cleaning the kitchen. I will always clean the kitchen. I tend to do his laundry pretty often, but he'll always put his stuff away.
If Ilyssa does my laundry, I'm gonna clean the litter box. If Ilyssa does the kitchen, I'm gonna do our bedroom. It's just equal work.
If I buy something that needs its decor or it needs to be up on the walls, he hangs it. All the stuff that's up there and all the stuff that's in our room, I organized it all. I said, this is what's gonna go up there. I laid it all out for him and then he hangs it up. He is better with tools than I am. Never really taught how to use tools. And not that I couldn't now, but I think that Kyle is really proficient.
Don't have expectations for, Ilyssa, you're a woman, you should be doing the dishes, because that kind of shit doesn't fly anymore. Kyle, you're a man, you should be doing man shit outside with the yard, which we don't have, but if we did, we wouldn't have classifications based on gender.
We're also really good about switching off the responsibility for our pets. We both walk Leia, we both feed Gatsby, but he definitely cleans Gatsby's litter box, because I don't.
We divvy it up and we call each other out on not doing things that we are supposed to be doing or that we said we've been doing.
I think that that was something that we had to deconstruct from the start of our relationship. We had to say, hey, am I doing this because I'm expected to do this, or am I doing this because I want to do this for you? I think our previous roommate was kind of aghast that I didn't cook for Kyle every single night when he came home because she thought that that was expected of a woman to do. And I just don't do that. But now I do cook for him fairly often because I want to, because I want to bless him with that. And acts of service is sort of how I show love. And I know that Kyle really appreciates that when I do cook for him. He enjoys that. But we did have to deconstruct those things, I think. You know, what are you expected to do? What am I expected to do? Am I doing this because I want to, or am I doing it because I think society tells me I'm expected to do this? I've talked about this previously on Periscope and elsewhere, but Kyle and I, because of the fact that we both make similar amounts, we have completely individual finances.
As a couple, separate bank accounts.
If Kyle wants to buy something like a TV and I don't have any need for that, he's going to buy it. I am not obligated to help him with funds for that. If there's a large purchase that we need to make together, say like our rent, that goes 50-50, always, always, always. We will share that responsibility, but we keep independent bank accounts, and even through the course of our marriage, we will keep independent bank accounts. I am sure that we will have a joint bank account together at some point, but as it stands right now, because we are both sort of even in what we make in our professions, it makes more sense for us to keep individual finances.
I don't see the reason to have a joint bank account even once we get married. We most likely will have one day, but we have completely separate careers.
I believe that I never, never, ever wanted to be dependent upon him. I watched my mom be dependent upon my dad before their divorce, and she gave up her career and, you know, she took care of us. But when my parents got divorced, because she didn't have a job, she was dependent upon my dad for alimony and for all those things so that she could get back on her feet and get back to work. She's an RN and, you know, she was able to do it. And this wasn't my dad's fault, you know, this was something that my mom wanted to do. But, you know, from that point on, she had told me, you don't ever be dependent upon a man, ever, ever, ever. You keep completely independent finances, and so I stand firm in that conviction that I never want to be dependent upon anyone, my partner or otherwise, for money.
Her money is her money, my money is my money, and for things that we need that are going to be a part of our relationship here at home, buying things around the house, that's our money. I'll go out and buy things from the store that are necessities here at home. and I'll expect her to do it at times as well.
I do think though that if there is a couple that they make vastly different amounts, then I absolutely believe that there should be sort of a percentage of your funds that go towards certain bills if you make a percentage of the household income. And I want to make that clear because I think previously in my Periscope I sort of made a very flimsy argument around that. But I do believe that Kyle and I, our situation is that we make equal amounts, and therefore we have very independent finances and we pay for things individually, and then we split everything else 50-50 in terms of household bills. I've said this many times. I think that when you are having conflict with someone or an argument, you are not really necessarily having an argument about the same thing, because you're probably not sharing the same assumptions. Kyle and I understand that when we have an argument about something, it's because we are viewing it through entirely different lenses. Me as an ESTJ and him as an ENFP, we're quite opposite. So something that I might see as laziness, he just sees as forgetfulness. Something that he might see as over-dominance or control, I might just see as responsibility.
The best relationships still have conflict, especially when you are dealing with an ESTJ like Ilyssa and an ENFP like myself. I'm a lot more relaxed and easygoing, go with the flow mentality, and she's a lot more list, goal oriented, where she likes having things plotted out and getting them done.
The first thing that we do is that we acknowledge, hey, we're having an argument right now, and we check in with one another. What's going on here? How are you seeing the situation? How am I seeing this situation? Okay, let's move on now that we've accepted. Let's contextualize. Are we shadowboxing with a previous argument or having a conversation about something that we're fighting about right now? Is this problem actually the problem, or is it being influenced by rolling my eyes at you earlier today? Is that why you're angry right now? Are you associating previous problems? So once we've contextualized, we always talk through to a solution. What can I do to make this better? What did I do?
There are lots of conflicts that we run into because of our two separate perspective on things that go on a daily basis, but we resolve conflict by simply talking about it.
Sometimes I just want to talk things out as an external thinker, as an ESTJ, and figure out, what's the problem here? What's going on? When Kyle will just say, it's not a problem, you are making it into a problem because you're overanalyzing it. And I'll have to walk away and think about it and just let it pass. There are also times where Kyle might see something as not nearly as big of a deal as it is to me, right? He only sees the top of the iceberg when I've got an entire iceberg underneath. So that's when I have to explain to him, hey, this is a bigger deal to me and I need you to acknowledge that, and I need you to see how that is, a big deal to me. And he'll have to think about it for a while, but I've got to give him some time and some space, and then he'll come back to me and he'll say, okay, I see your perspective now. I'm sorry I didn't see it in the heat of the moment. And how can we work this out now?
We either sit down and talk about it right then, or we sit down and realize we're both still too heated because our defense mechanisms are very different. She gets quiet and withdrawn, whereas I get loud and angry. So when this happens, we'll realize we're both still way too heated because she's too quiet and I'm too loud. And so we'll take a little cool off period, a few hours, and that night we're gonna sit down and we're gonna talk it out, we're gonna hash it out and make sure things are okay. And it usually leads to us simply having a different perspective on what that argument was, picking it apart and figuring out, it's not a who's wrong game at that point because that ship has sailed. If neither one of you were able to fess up to being wrong, you have to both come to the conclusion that you saw it this way and I didn't, and I understand that you saw it this way and I didn't. So we're both in the wrong in terms of perceiving this argument one way or the other.
Kyle is also very, very patient with me, and I am not patient. And so I appreciate that he gives me some slack when I am being overbearing. And when I am not being kind to him because I'm not patient, I have to go to him and ask his forgiveness for being overly controlling or sometimes rude because I didn't get the reaction that I wanted.
And that's done wonders for us over the last year.
I think both of our sets of parents understand that we are a bit different in our relationship.
They don't seem to have any issue with it.
It's caused conflict here and there just because we are so maybe progressive, or the fact that we wanted to make a new last name together that was just different.
Ilyssa's family is very open. My family is very open to these things. We live in 2016. We're engaged. I'm 28, she's 25. We're adults. What are you gonna tell us?
Our parents really love us, and we're very, very blessed in that sense that they understand that we're both a little quirky. You know, Kyle gonna Kyle, and Kyle asked my dad, you know, can I marry her? You know, he didn't necessarily ask permission, but said, I want to marry your daughter, and is that okay? And my dad said, if you can handle her.
We do what we can to respect their feelings on matters, and we're open and honest about things. That's the best thing you can really ask for people, is just be open and honest. And Ilyssa and I are pretty much open and honest about everything with our family.
And I think that our parents are really happy for us, and they're actually gonna meet on Labor Day weekend. How do we deal with Kyle as an ENFP? His sort of carefree, whimsical, easygoing way of seeing the world, and my ESTJ need to do the right thing, must do the right thing, sense of duty kind of understanding or pattern of thought.
I think the one thing that she and I always come down to, stop trying to change your partner. There are certain things that should be expected to change, things that can hurt a relationship or hurt each other individually, that should be worked on. But there are deep core values that you shouldn't try to change in people.
The first thing is the fact that we took our Myers-Briggs test and that we understand these things about each other, that we understand that we are not only different in terms of how we show love and how we give love, but also just our personalities are just so radically different. So I have to be patient with him. Even when I'm not patient, I have to understand that I'm gonna have to stretch myself to not try to control him, but rather to keep what I need to do in one place and let him figure things out on his own instead of trying to control his environment.
She realizes that my personality, it is what it is. My freestyle way of living is something that she will have to work with as hard as I will have to work with her intensity.
And the same thing with him. He needs to recognize that I'm gonna wanna control everything, and there are certain things he's gonna have to let me do the way that I wanna do them, and he's gonna have to conform to that.
I am willing to do things that I normally wouldn't, and she is willing to do things that she normally would not. And because of that, we have a compromise, and as long as we both acknowledge it, we're gonna be fine. Being completely opposite ends of the spectrum.
So it comes back to compromise. We are never, ever, ever trying to specifically ask the other person to sacrifice any part of their own personality, but instead just to compromise on things so that we can come to a middle ground.
That's it. Love y'all.
I hope that you guys liked this video. I hope that it was fun for you. It was super fun for us to do. And if you have any other questions, just let us know in the comments down below. We'd love to continue doing a video series on our engagement as we approach our wedding next year, especially when it comes to maybe more feminist wedding plans. But thank you guys for watching so much, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.